Imagine standing in a police station, bruised, shaking, and desperate, pleading for help in a language you barely speak. An interpreter speaks for you, but you can't be sure if your complaint is being heard or the danger is fully understood. For thousands of foreign nationals in Taiwan married to Taiwanese citizens, this is not a dark fantasy. It's reality. When Ayue's husband first began beating her, she went to the police, but they seemed dismissive. They advised her to forgive her Taiwanese husband as it was his first offense, and they promised to help if he hit her again. The abuse continued, however, even after Ayue obtained a protection order against her husband. Then one day she was directed to a shelter for victims of domestic violence. That changed everything. At the shelter, social workers guided her through the process of leaving her husband, filing for divorce, and securing custody of her 2 children. Choices she had previously been told were impossible. Today, Ayue wipes away tears of gratitude for the community support she received.
很多人，我都会记起来，他们让我什么，我都会记
There
得。
are so many people I will never forget. I will always remember everything they have done for me.
我爸爸妈妈还是我姐姐弟弟。
My parents and siblings are in Vietnam. They couldn't be here for me.
台湾
But the people I found in Taiwan, even though we aren't related, they put their whole hearts into helping me. I'm so grateful.
我觉得现在
I'm doing quite well now. I can provide for my children, and I've even saved some money. By Taiwanese standards, it isn't much, but to me, it seems like a lot.
While Ayue sought ways to find help, that was not the case for Inda, who is from Indonesia. Help had to find her. For years, Inda silently endured physical abuse by her Taiwanese husband. She never spoke out for fear that she might be deported and would lose her young son, while also persuading herself that her son needed his father.
就是没有台湾身份证，kalau aku pulang
I
ke
didn't have
Indonesia,
Taiwanese citizenship then. I kept thinking, if I go back to Indonesia, what would happen to my son? My mother always told me, you don't just speak of divorce the moment things get hard. You have to think of your children.
Her sense of entrapment may have continued indefinitely had her son not spoken to one of his teachers about the situation at home. The teacher reached out to Inda to confirm the information and guided her to seek help from social services. Following the teacher's advice, Inda called the 113 domestic abuse hotline.
Kayaknya ada waktu itu pas itu aku laporan ke
At the time, I was seeking guidance on my options because I didn't have Taiwanese citizenship. I was told that a divorce would require me to leave my child in my husband's care.
It was then that fate intervened. Inda's husband had a traffic accident that severely injured both of his legs. For a while, he became even more aggressive towards her. But not long after the accident, he was diagnosed with cancer. While Inda was no longer in the direct line of fire from her husband's temper, she came up against a fresh set of challenges. She had become the main breadwinner and bore the weight of taking care of her son, her sick husband, and her dependent mother-in-law. Inda often wept behind her scooter helmet, but she stayed strong for her family. She received help from many people: a bank employee who guided her to part-time work, her employer who lent her money in times of need, and social workers who offered steady and sustained support.
我在这边不管是那个是真的遇到很
I will
多
never forget the kindness I found here.
我没有
No matter
我没有
what
忘记
happened,
我永远都会记得
There were always good
我
people,
在台湾
truly.
过了很辛苦，可是
My life in
旁边的人
Taiwan has
真的
been so
很多好
hard.
人来帮我
But I was never
没
alone.
变你
I will forever remember those who stood by me.
Today, Inda remains committed to taking care of her terminally ill husband and is looking forward to seeing their son graduate. In 1998, Taiwan became the first Asian country to categorize domestic violence as a public crime when it established the Domestic Violence Prevention Act. The law mandates reporting of domestic abuse and protection of the victims. But while the law is strong on paper, In reality, it often fails foreign spouses of Taiwanese citizens. Hong Manzhi, head of the Transasia Sisters Association Taiwan, says she sees a vicious cycle of reality every day.
The
reality is this. They get beaten. They flee to their friends to seek shelter. Then the husband begs them to come back. They think of their children at home, so they return to take care of them. Then the beating happens again. They run away again, and the husband and mother-in-law come to plead yet again. It's actually just a constant cycle. There is no one they can truly rely on to properly handle the problem and help end such unhealthy relationships.
For Xiaoling, an abused spouse originally from China, it felt like a maze when she tried to navigate the system to find help. She spent months shuttling between government offices, unsure where to turn, and she often left those offices feeling more confused than before.
A social worker told me it wasn't safe for me and my child to be out on the streets and offered to find us a shelter. I was worried and asked, what if it's nowhere near my child's school? They didn't have an answer for me. Back then, I was just so afraid of the unknown. My own case proves just how many gaps there are in the system. I've taken so many detours. It took me a very long time just to find the right help. Getting help isn't easy. It requires an immense amount of courage to even try.
If the system seems daunting to abuse victims like Xiaoling who speak Mandarin, it's much worse in many ways for those who face a language barrier. Control UN Commissioner Ye Dahua recalls a case in Jinmen, where the victim was not only given the runaround, but was also exploited. The woman was a migrant caregiver who had been hired through a broker, and she was trying to report an incident of sexual assault, Ye said.
The police sent her an interpreter from her own hometown, but the interpreter colluded with the broker and did not fully convey the woman's situation. They glossed over the key details and even gave misleading information. We need to build a system that empowers second-generation bilingual immigrants to serve as interpreters, providing them with proper support and fair compensation. The demand for their expertise will only continue to grow.
The number of reported abuse cases in intimate relationships involving foreign spouses remains steady at about 2,000 a year from 2020 to 2024, the latest full year for which data is available. But these numbers may seriously understate the problem. A study conducted by National Taiwan University in 2025 found that victims typically endure domestic abuse for more than 4 years before coming forward. For those who escape, one of the biggest challenges is finding a shelter so that they do not have to return to the danger. Transitional shelters are not a solution, as they offer only temporary refuge.
If they don't have financial stability or a place to call home, they often find themselves pulled back into the situation they tried so hard to leave. In many areas, survivors were previously allowed to stay in temporary shelters for about 2 weeks only, a time frame that kept them trapped in a repetitive cycle of abuse once they returned home. After we voiced our concerns, the central government responded by extending the time limit to 3 months.
Throughout Taiwan, local governments offer legal aid, counseling, financial assistance, and various types of housing to victims of domestic abuse, but the level of support varies sharply by region. In 2020, a social housing project was launched in Linkou in New Taipei, providing a more long-term solution for victims of domestic abuse. Designed to facilitate healing, it has 20 housing units, counseling rooms, and quiet areas for reflection. There are also dedicated playrooms and other spaces for children, who also have access to professional psychotherapy services. The domestic abuse survivors who obtain shelter there are permitted to stay for up to 2 years.
We also give domestic violence survivors higher priority in our social housing lottery, boosting their chances of securing a unit in the regular housing projects.
Some counties and cities have significant resource constraints and can't provide adequate services. As a result, their annual funding, specifically for shelter and essential programs, is often depleted early in the year. Once those funds dry up, the lack of financial support for survivors and their children becomes a critical issue.
In Miaoli, small steps are also being taken to improve the shelter situation, which currently offers survivors only temporary accommodation in shared apartments. Despite its tight budget, the county government is aiming to open a new centrally located facility this year that will expand capacity to 12 survivors.
We chose this location because it offers convenient access to schools and a reliable public transit system. It is also close to hospitals and parks and ensures that survivors can easily access the support they need.
The Miaoli County government said that despite budgetary challenges, it's working to maintain consistent baseline support for all survivors.
The
more funding we have, the more diverse our services can be, and the fewer restrictions we'll face. But even when the budget is tight, our core services are never halted. Our shelters are always open. We manage our resources with flexibility, adjusting subsidies for things like legal aid when we have to. But we would never, under any circumstances, completely shut down a service due to a lack of funding.
The Ministry of Health and Welfare oversees policy implementation through regular coordination and review meetings with local government officials. It says central government spending for overall abuse prevention and funding to local governments have increased significantly in recent years.
Our total abuse prevention budget grew from 5 billion new Taiwan dollars in 2020 to 7.5 billion new Taiwan dollars in 2023, a 50% increase. Even more significantly, central government funding for local governments surged from 400 million to 1.24 billion new Taiwan dollars, a 2.8-fold increase in those 4 years. That upward trend continues today.
Despite the increasing funding, access to justice remains a barrier for survivors of domestic abuse.
I've helped many survivors apply for pro bono lawyers for their divorce cases, but many applicants failed to qualify. Having even a small amount of savings or insurance was enough to make them ineligible for free legal aid. These sisters are terrified. They are fleeing abuse and they need to pay rent and support their children's future. If the little savings they have are drained by legal fees, they have nothing left to live on and don't know how to survive.
For foreign spouses, the thought of reporting domestic abuse has triggered fears of losing their Taiwanese residency. But a revision to the law offers stronger protections and fewer conditions. All they need is a police report of the abuse to stay in Taiwan.
Under the current immigration regulations, foreign spouses who obtain divorce due to domestic violence can apply for residency in Taiwan. They can renew their one-year residency permit each time it expires, as long as they have not remarried, and they do not need to provide any other reason.
Previously, foreign spouses who divorced due to domestic violence and had no other legal grounds to change their visa status would have had their ARC revoked. Today, they no longer have to worry about the threat of deportation.
After 5 years of legal residency, foreign nationals may apply for permanent residency. Once granted, they no longer need to renew their ARC and can reside in Taiwan long-term.
Taiwan's safety net for abuse victims has grown significantly stronger over the years. But the real test is whether it can reach and support foreign spouses in their darkest hours. The true challenge lies in bridging the gulf between written law and lived reality, so that foreign abuse victims can move beyond survival and have a strong chance to start afresh. Shi Xiujuan, Jennifer Aurelia, and Rick Eve in Taipei for CNA.